Eternal war, why, and battles never end. Let's drift right into it. What if the soil beneath your feet is not silent at all, but vibrating with the echoes of endless wars that have been raging not for years or centuries, but for millions of years? Imagine crouching low in a meadow at dawn, the grass heavy with dew, the air still. Then, like shadows stirring, two armies emerge, rivers of black and red bodies flowing toward one another. They do not fight for honor. They do not fight for ideology. They fight because war for ants is not a choice. It is their nature, written into every heartbeat of their colonies. Ant battles are unlike anything humans have ever staged. For us, wars flare up and fade, bound by treaties, borders, and political exhaustion. For ants, war is constant, a relentless pressure that defines their existence. Colonies wage skirmishes over hunting trails, water droplets, scraps of land no bigger than your palm. A single leaf may become the center of a siege. A decaying log may ignite a campaign that lasts for weeks. To you, the battlefield is invisible, but to them, it is everything. Picture the clash up close, mandibles snapping like steel traps, bodies twisting and grappling, venom injected in silent precision. Acid sprays into the air, burning the soil, marking the battlefield with chemical scars invisible to human eyes. Thousands fall in the frenzy, yet the war rages on, each body replaced by another. Unlike us, ants do not mourn their dead. Every fallen soldier is simply a piece of the whole, a sacrifice absorbed by the superorganism. And yet, the scale is even greater than you might imagine. The Argentine ants of Europe form sprawling supercolonies, billions strong, stretching across nations. When rival supercolonies meet, the slaughter is apocalyptic. Scientists have documented battlefields littered with millions of bodies in a single day, heaps of corpses swept aside by the living, like autumn leaves piling against the curb. Imagine if human wars reached that magnitude, entire populations willingly throwing themselves into trenches without hesitation. For ants, it is daily life. What if, in truth, ants have already perfected war in a way we never could? They employ strategies that eerily mirror our own: ambushes, sieges, chemical espionage, even slavery. Some ants infiltrate rival nests with pheromones that mask them as allies, sowing confusion before the slaughter begins. Others deploy suicide warriors, exploding ants that rupture their own bodies, gluing attackers into paralysis. Every tactic humans pride themselves on inventing, from kamikaze strikes to chemical warfare, ants had already mastered long before we walked upright. But there is no peace after victory. The war never ends. Even colonies that triumph today may collapse tomorrow, their territory consumed by another neighbor. The soil is always shifting, resources always contested, enemies always multiplying. For ants, peace is an illusion, a brief pause between battles. Their world is one of endless front lines, eternal campaigns written not on maps, but in pheromone trails across the earth. And here is the unsettling mirror. Strip away the flags, the speeches, the ideologies. And what are human wars if not the same? Struggles for territory, for resources, for survival. We cloak our conflicts in stories of freedom, justice, and honor, but the bones beneath are no different from those of ants. Their endless wars remind us that conflict may not be an accident of civilization, but its engine. Perhaps the most chilling thought is this: if humans vanish tomorrow, the wars of ants will not stop. They will continue beneath the soil, beneath the forests, beneath the ruins of our cities. Perhaps the Earth's true history is not written in monuments or ruins, but in the pheromone trails of creatures that never knew peace. And so the next time you see ants marching across your kitchen counter, remember, you are watching soldiers, heirs to a battlefield older than humanity itself. For them, war is not tragedy, it is eternity. the chemistry of endless conflict. Let's drift right into it. What if every empire, no matter how vast or mighty, is ultimately just a collection of signals? For humans, it is flags, words, and laws. For ants, it is chemicals, invisible banners, silent commands, the language of war written in the air. Picture two colonies meeting at the edge of their territories. To you, the ground looks bare, maybe just a few pebbles and blades of grass. But to them, it is a frontier lit up in pheromones, an invisible battlefield already mapped with warnings, trails, and threats. Ant wars are not chaotic riots of insects bumping blindly into each other. They are orchestrated, coordinated, executed with the precision of generals, except the generals are molecules. A scout ant detects the faint scent of another colony's trail, returns to her nest, and releases alarm pheromones. In moments, the colony stirs. Workers rush forward, soldiers assemble. The entire nest begins to flow outward like a single living organism mobilized for war. There are no speeches, no counsels, no hesitation. The scent alone is enough. Now imagine what happens when two rivers of pheromones collide. Chemical messages overlap, intensify, twist into a storm of signals. The battlefield becomes saturated with rage. To humans, it is silent. To ants, it is deafening. Each ant follows its orders without question. Attack, bite, spray acid, inject venom. The air becomes a chemical war zone, a fog of invisible commands that pushes them forward even as they die. And in this lies the eerie brilliance of their warfare. Ant colonies are not armies of individuals, but a single superorganism. Each ant is just a cell carrying out instructions. When one cell dies, the organism does not falter. The pheromone code continues, ensuring that the war machine never stops. Compare this to human wars where fear, desertion, or rebellion can fracture armies. Ants have no such weakness. They obey to the end because disobedience is impossible. Their loyalty is not moral, but chemical. But pheromones do more than command attacks. They can also deceive. Some ant species are masters of chemical espionage, secreting scents that disguise them as friendly forces. Imagine spies who need no uniforms, no disguises, only a molecular mask. These infiltrators walk straight into enemy nests, unchallenged, until the slaughter begins from within. Others flood the battlefield with confusion, releasing chemical signals that scramble enemy communication, making them turn on each other in chaos. In human terms, it is propaganda, sabotage, and psychological warfare, but ants wield it with microscopic precision. The terrifying part is that these wars have no treaties, no negotiation, no peace accords. The chemical signals never include compromise. It is always fight, always kill, always defend. When the pheromones fade, it is not because peace was achieved, but because there is nothing left to fight. One colony is dead, consumed, or enslaved. The winners expand their territory until the next signal of threat ignites the next battle. Step back, and you see the larger truth. Ant wars never end because their very language ensures they cannot. They live in a constant state of readiness, their world carved into invisible front lines. Even when the battlefield looks quiet, pheromone trails are already drawing tomorrow's maps of conflict. Now reflect on our own species. How often do human wars ignite not because of reasoned choice, but because of signals, propaganda, slogans, flags? The chemistry of our own minds stirred into rage. Ants show us that war can be automated, mechanical, inevitable, when the code of survival demands it. Their battles are not accidents. They are programs, running endlessly in the soil beneath us. And perhaps that is the deepest unease. We pride ourselves on choice, on morality, on diplomacy, but the ants remind us that beneath it all, war might be less about choice than about signals we cannot escape. They are enslaved by their pheromones. We perhaps are enslaved by our own instincts. The siege machines of soil. Step closer now, and imagine peeling back the earth beneath your feet. What you would see is not chaos, but geometry, spirals of tunnels, vaulted chambers, and shafts that breathe like lungs. The ants are not mere diggers, they are architects, engineers, survivalists who shape the ground into fortresses and factories. Their cities are built without blueprints, yet their precision rivals anything we have ever raised into the sky. Picture a colony of leafcutter ants carving tunnels that can stretch for 30 meters underground, chambers that store leaves, and hidden vaults where fungi grow like crops. The air inside circulates through carefully angled shafts, regulating temperature and humidity. To us, it looks like instinct. But what if instinct itself is a kind of ancient blueprint written into the very bones of their species long before our first bricks were ever laid? Now imagine an army laying siege to such a fortress. To us, castles fall because walls can be breached. But ant colonies do not rely on walls, they rely on depth. You could crush the entrance, flood the mound, even burn the surface. Yet beneath, the labyrinth continues. Thousands of chambers remain untouched, and the ants simply dig new exits, rerouting their empire in silence. It is as if their homes are liquid, flowing around any obstacle, always reforming, always enduring. Their architecture does not merely protect them, it creates possibility. Consider the floating rafts of fire ants, colonies that stitch their bodies together to survive floods. Each ant locks limbs with another, creating a living platform that can endure for weeks upon water. At the surface, they form a shield beneath. They hang in a net, rotating to prevent exhaustion. No commander calls the design. The blueprint exists in the collective. You cannot drown them, for their city simply becomes the river itself. Think of this in human terms. Imagine if cities could melt and reform when bombed, if skyscrapers could bend and weave themselves into rafts during floods, if underground metros doubled as food farms, air vents, and storm drains. What we achieve through machines and conscious design, ants achieve through instinct and unity. Their civilization does not require permanence in stone, it thrives in flexibility. And there is more. Some ants build out of their enemies. Army ants leave behind trails of their own dead bodies piled into bridges and barricades so the living can march on. Others enslave conquered ants, bending their labor into the architecture of their empire. A human army may burn villages to the ground, but ant armies turn villages into bricks, enemies into tools, death into infrastructure. This is the essence of the superorganism. Architecture is not separate from life, it is life itself. The nest is not merely a city, but an extension of the colony's body, pumping air, storing food, processing waste, birthing new generations. To destroy it, you must kill not a building, but the organism that built it. And the organism is vast, diffuse, and endlessly persistent. So, when you walk across a field and see only dirt, remember that beneath you lies a fortress greater than any castle, a labyrinth older than any cathedral. The ants build not to impress, not to remember, but to endure. Their monuments are not stone, but survival itself. Perhaps that is the real lesson. We build to be remembered. They build to never be forgotten. Our cities crumble when empires fall. Their cities endure because their empire never ends. The shadow civilization. Pause for a moment and let your imagination sink beneath the noise of cities, the endless hum of highways, the glass and steel towers that scrape the clouds. What if, when the last skyscraper crumbles and our monuments return to dust, another empire remains silent, tireless, unseen? This is the unsettling truth. Ants, those minuscule beings we dismiss as pests, may already embody a civilization older, larger, and more enduring than our own. Not individuals, but a collective shadow, an empire woven through the roots of the world. Consider their numbers, quadrillions spread across continents, their combined biomass outweighing all wild birds and mammals. They fight wars that redraw territories, farm fungi long before humans discovered agriculture, and herd aphids as if they were cattle. In every sense but poultry, they have already achieved the milestones we celebrate as hallmarks of human progress. And yet they do it without generals, without kings, without architects. Their order emerges from chaos, their intelligence from instinct. What if this is the truest kind of power, not the brilliance of one mind, but the persistence of many? Now imagine Earth without us. Highways cracking, cities overtaken by vines, satellites falling silent. Ants will not mourn us. They will continue carving tunnels, farming crops, waging wars. Supercolonies may spread across continents, invisible borders expanding until entire ecosystems bend to their presence. To us, collapse is catastrophe. To ants, collapse is simply transition. One nest dies, another thrives. Their empire does not end, it migrates. The shadow they cast across history is not of monuments, but of permanence. Rome fell, the Mayans vanished, Mesopotamia lies in ruin. But ants were here before, and ants are here still. They do not care for memory, because endurance is its own kind of legacy. What if our story is a brief interlude, and theirs is the endless text written in soil and pheromone? There is something eerie in this thought. We chase individuality, our names etched into stone, our statues raised in plazas. Ants erase individuality. No single worker matters, no soldier remembered. Yet in that erasure, they achieve what we cannot, a kind of immortality. They are not I, they are we. They are not fleeting sparks. They are the fire that never burns out. Perhaps this is why their civilization unnerves us so deeply. It mirrors ours, but without our fragility. We build nations, wage wars, write laws. So do they. But where our empires collapse under famine or corruption, there's reform endlessly. Their world has no need for heroes, only survival. And in survival, they surpass us. So the next time you see a trail of ants cutting across the kitchen floor, resist the urge to dismiss them. Look closer. You are glimpsing the shadow of a civilization that has lasted for 100 million years. Not a kingdom that rises and falls, but a presence that outlives everything it touches. And the most chilling thought, we dream of colonizing the stars, of founding empires among planets. But perhaps the true rulers of Earth were never us. Perhaps the crown has always belonged to the ants. Not in monuments, not in memory, but in permanence.